Hello darlings, welcome back to Dining Through the Decades. My name is Sage Lillyman, and in this week's episode we are going to be making a classic meatloaf. This recipe is from an American World War II ration cookbook in 1943, which was published by the General Foods Corporation. I love meatloaf and I can't wait to try out this recipe. Housewives in the 1940s would have tried to extend their meat ration because they only had a small amount that they were allowed to use each week, so they would have tried to use up something like a meatloaf not just for one meal, but for several meals across the week. They would have put it in soups and stews, put it between sandwiches, and just had it cold. I can't wait to try this recipe, so let's get started. So we've got a large bowl here, and we're just going to go through the ingredients one by one and add them in the sequence that's given. So first things first, we're going to be putting in some mince. And so I have 2 packets of this, which is about 800 to 900 grams, and I'm going to be using some beef-free mince, some vegetarian mince. And then we're just going to put that in here and then add some egg and all the other ingredients. It's kind of creepy how realistic they can make this mince. I mean, I feel like it looks legitimately like beef mince. Alright, so I've got the mince in here and I'm just going to break it up with a wooden spoon before we then add the rest of our ingredients in. I've just put this bowl aside and I'm going to cut up my celery, onion and parsley. Alright, so I've got my chopped parsley here. I'm going to add into the beef mince. Alright, I've got my celery here that I'm going to finely chop. And I'll link all of the measurements for all of the ingredients in the description box below. So I'm going to use about 3/4 of a cup of celery here. And of course, no waste, we're going to use the whole celery top here, including the leaves. Alright, and then we'll add in our celery tops, and our celery. Alright, now I'm just going to use a small onion and finely chop this as well. Oh. We're going to try and get this onion as fine as possible, so try and mince this up. Alright, next we're going to add in all of our seasonings, so our salt, our ground sage and our pepper. Alright, and I'm going to put in half a teaspoon of sage. Okay, we're going to put in 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. Alright, now I'm going to add the egg next. And these are fresh eggs from the chickens. Now I'm just going to mix this together before adding in the milk and our breadcrumbs. Because it is an American recipe, it calls for grape nuts, and I don't believe we have those in Australia. So I have some shredded wheat here for my cereal, and then I've just put in some breadcrumbs because I think that goes nice in meatloaf. So I'm just going to break these up and then add in my breadcrumbs and milk, and that's pretty much it. And then adding in the breadcrumbs. Alright, and then adding in our cup of milk. And if you don't have milk, you can add in stock as well. Alright, I've got 1/4 cup of tomato sauce here, or ketchup, and I'm just adding that in, and that's our last ingredient. And then we can mold it all together and put it in a loaf tin, a greased loaf tin. Whoops. It smells like meatloaf now that we've added the tomato sauce in. I'm just going to grease this loaf tin, and then we're going to add in our meatloaf, and then we'll make the glaze and pour that over the top and put it in the oven. I hope this is going to be big enough for all this mixture. Alright, we want to smooth it out so it's nice and even on top so that it looks presentable. Okay, so for this glaze, the recipe didn't actually call for a glaze, it just said to serve with tomato sauce. So I've gone ahead and found a nice glaze recipe. So I'm going to be adding 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of tomato sauce, and a little bit of mustard. And then I'm also going to add in 1/4 cup of tomato sauce. And it asks for a tablespoon of mustard, but I am no way you're going to add in a tablespoon. I'll add in 1/2 teaspoon because this stuff is hot. Alright, and we're going to mix it all together now. Add this to the top and smooth it out. Something about this tomato sauce glaze I have such fond memories of. The smell of it is just so delicious, and my mum used to make a mean meatloaf. It was delicious, and so I'm so excited to have this because it's been a while since I've had meatloaf. Alright, we're going to put it in the oven, and the oven is preheated to 375 degrees Fahrenheit or 190 degrees Celsius. The meatloaf is going to be in the oven for 1 hour and 15 minutes, so we'll see you when it's ready. The meatloaf is done, and I've made up a little plate here to present the meatloaf on. I've just put a little bit of lettuce, cherry tomatoes, and some parsley. So let's take it out of the oven. I'm just going to slide the knife down the sides to make sure that it's not stuck. I'm just going to cut some slices and then lay them out on the little plate. Okay, I'm going to try and lever some pieces out. Oh my goodness. Oh, it looks really good from the inside. It looks delicious. I've got my lovely meatloaf fresh out of the oven. It smells delicious and I can't wait to try it. I also have a little bit of extra glaze here just in case I need to add a little bit more flavor. Meatloaf is good. Let me get part of the glaze. The glaze really makes it. I love tomato and tomato and sugar. That's delicious on glaze. And a little cherry tomato to add to the mix. This meatloaf is delicious and I'll make sure to link the recipe down below if you want to make it too. Make sure to let me know if you do. This would go beautiful with a whole plate of baked veggies with potato and cauliflower and beans and even some gravy too. Delicious. I always say delicious too much. Thank you all so much for watching and I'll see you next week for another episode of Dining Through the Decades. Bye! It's so cringy, I can't do it! Oh my god, they're taking it out of the oven! Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Okay.